Hi, welcome to the channel. I'm Summer. Today we are doing a bob haircut tutorial, and specifically a bob that makes your hair look its most thick and full self. This is great for any hair type, but especially those of you with fine hair and a lower density. We're going to be creating a nice, clean, blunt perimeter with slight angling towards the front with lived-in soft layers. This cut is meant to give you some soft, subtle movement, but without traditional layers. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, so we are going to get started and section off for our bob cut. I am going to cut her with the hair parted on the side. I feel like you guys really prefer side parts, which I do as well. Anytime I do a middle part, I always get requests for a side. So if you wear a side part, whether it's on the left or the right side, if you always wear it that way, you definitely want your hair cut to where you wear the part. If you part it obviously in the middle, go down the middle. If you flip flop, you'll want to cut down the middle. But if you always wear it on a side, it should be cut like that, because otherwise it's not going to lay even for you. So we're gonna come in and section our front from the back, and I'm gonna kind of come back to this crown area because this cut is meant to preserve as much thickness and fullness in the hair as possible. So I wanna make sure that I'm kind of over directing this hair from the crown region here, and I'm taking it and I'm coming probably just barely behind the ear or right in that area of the tip of the ear. I want to make sure the sides have as much hair as possible. Most people, the sides tend to have less hair than the back of the head. I'm going to just take out this slight little corner here. Perfect. And we're going to comb all that forward and clip. Actually, I want that a little tighter. So at the crown here, and you're just coming to right at the tip, right behind the ear. And we're just gonna repeat that on the other side. All right, so now that we have our sides clipped back, couldn't find my thing to spin her, we're gonna start in the back, and we're gonna be taking the length clear off of the shoulders here. So it's going to be below the jaw, but completely off the shoulders. So we're gonna be taking off about a good 1.5 inches, I would say, maybe a touch more. I'm gonna use this as a client, let's say, under the guise of they don't necessarily need to pull their hair back. As long as they can get it away from their face, they're fine. With where it lays, they just want it below the chin and off the shoulder. So with my bobs, I like to kind of break the hair into 2 sections. You can split it in the middle if you want. That just helps give you a little bit more control. But we're just gonna take our first baseline section here that's going to start our guide. And I just clip that up out of the way. I find doing 2 sections like this gives you more control, and it's easier sometimes to clip the hair rather than trying to just shove it all into one clip. So we're gonna always make sure that the client is looking down a little bit, because we wanna create slight elevation, and looking down just helps that. Keep our line nice and tight underneath. And so this first guide, I'm just gonna comb the hair straight down. I'm not gonna really lift it with my fingers at all. I want it to lay sort of as is. I'm not like combing it super hard to pull a lot of tension. I just want it to lay there nice and gentle. And we're gonna cut. So now that I've cut my guide here, I'm gonna use the wide side of my comb and just lightly pull that hair down without a lot of tension, because I want this length to be pretty precise. Sometimes if you pull with too much tension, especially on a bob, you end up getting it a little shorter than maybe you want. And then I like to come and take a look at that and make sure my corners are lining up. Sometimes in my tutorials, one of my corners will be longer than the other from how I'm angling my body. So we have our first section, and then we're gonna come and take our next one. I usually do about a 1/2 inch section per time, so that way I can easily see through to my guide. If the hair is too thick, you're gonna lose your guide. That's gonna lead to unevenness in the hair. We're gonna do the same thing. Just comb that hair down. And normally with bobs, depending on the bob, so like years ago, the heavy stack was pretty popular, where you would come in and you would really angle that hair out and lift off to create like a nice stack and elevation, so you really got like that tight, rounded look. Bobs right now are a little bit more just softer versions. There's a slight stack, but I don't even know that I would define it as a traditional stack from way back when. They're meant to look much more kind of like soft and subtle, where you maintain still a lot of fullness in the hair and it's just the slightest elevation. So all I'm gonna do, I'm still using the wide side of my comb. We're just combing the hair down. So right now my knuckles are touching the neck. All you're gonna do is just lightly lift those knuckles off. So I sort of will use my pinky as a guide for this. Let me do this on this secondary camera. Hopefully you can see better. So all of my knuckles are sort of on it. My pinky finger is gonna be my guide for where the amount I pull out. So I have it, I'm coming, and that pinky is still touching, but all of my other fingers are off of the neck. I know that's like a really weird way to explain this, but otherwise, if all of your fingers leave, look how much more height you have here, and you're removing a little bit more weight, and it creates that really old school stack, where this, I can feel my middle knuckle and my ring finger on the neck, and I'm just gonna lightly lift those off where just my pinky is on there. So this will create very soft elevation in the hair, but not too much. And I am opting to do mostly just like a blunt cut. I want this, again, to look really full. And this works, like I said, for any hair type, but it's really great for finer hair types because those blunt ends are really gonna thicken the hair, give that nice full look. And then of course, obviously, if you have more medium or coarse hair, it's gonna keep those ends looking really full for you guys. But I do opt to do more of a blunt cut with this. And we're just gonna comb that hair down, and I am staying using the wide side of my comb. It's very rare, I feel like, that I encourage you guys to cut with the wide side of the comb, but for this type of cut where you really wanna maintain like thickness and fullness and the length, I find that the wide side is better for that. And again, we're just lightly coming off of the neck for our slight elevation. My pinky is still touching. I use the pinky reference because I feel like it gives you a mental guide of how much you're bringing it out. Hopefully that makes sense the way that I'm explaining it. Because sometimes I feel like, especially if you're new to cutting bobs in hair, you can kind of lose how much you're pulling out or how far down you are. So I like that mental reminder and feeling of the pinky still touching, because I know I'm still pulling out the same amount of elevation. And then I like to come in and periodically check my corners and make sure everything is lining up. I think I'm a little tiny bit longer on this side. And I still always like to take sections all the way up, even if I feel like, oh, I could see. I just still do it because it just keeps for a nicer, cleaner haircut. And apparently I didn't lock that clip into place. So essentially this bob, as you're cutting it, kind of just feels like almost a one length haircut. Again, we have very slight elevation coming out, but you're bringing everything down to that base perimeter. We're not severely stacking anything, and we're not layering. We're actually gonna wait to do these layers until almost when I dry the hair, because I want to maintain the most amount of fullness and thickness in the hair. I don't want to create my layers when the hair is wet. Sometimes you visually don't see it the same way. You can't see where the weight is lying, or where you maybe need to take out a little bit more or maybe a little bit less with how you create the layers. So in cases like this where we want max thickness, I prefer to cut them at the end. And this bob is not traditional layers. It's very much so like a lived-in soft layer where you're cutting into the hair, not necessarily just traditional round or square layers. It's gonna be how the hair is laying when it's straight and dry, and you get to see where kind of the visual weight of the cut is, if you need to, like I said, remove more in certain areas or take less. So we're gonna come down and cut our last section, which there won't be a lot here because this was our top layer. And usually the top layer I just bring straight down. I don't worry so much about the elevation because that top section is gonna actually be cut into a little bit more when we go in to create the shape with the lived-in layers. So here we have it. It is fully off of the neck. I'm gonna position her back a little bit more straight, but you can clearly see the neck. We can actually still pull this into a low ponytail if you need to. If it was shorter, obviously you wouldn't be able to. But I like this length of bob because you have a little bit more versatility with it. It's sometimes easier to curl when it's left a little bit longer than when it's fully, you know, chopped off here. It kind of creates a different learning curve, I should say, when you are wanting to wave or curl the hair. So we're gonna come into our sides, and I like to just do like a soft diagonal going forward. I am gonna create the slightest angle, very soft, but I like to do it a little bit angled and longer in the front because typically I find that people's hair in the back feels like it grows faster. So what happens is if the back grows out, and this is more so if you get a bob like once every 8 weeks, 12 weeks. If you're going more regularly at like that 5 and 6 week mark, it's not so much of an issue. But what happens is this back grows out sometimes faster, and it'll look like the back is longer. So it kind of sets off the balance. It looks like you're really heavy in the back and like that hair is pulling you down. It also draws the eye down, especially from a side view, which a lot of women do not want that, especially as we age. We want the eye traveling up. So I just find when the hair still angles forward, it for one does keep it looking more like a classic bob, but it also prevents that feeling that your head is like being pulled back, and it really throws off the haircut. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna comb this straight down, wide side of the comb. And we're just gonna skim this, and we're not gonna pull super taut because I don't want to ruin that length. I want it to be pretty accurate. So we're just slightly angled, nothing crazy. And I'm just doing a nice solid blunt cut. So it's just a very, very soft angle. If afterwards, after I get it dried and styled, if I feel like it's too long, or if the client's like, it's just hanging there, you can always remove it. But I like to do it a little longer at first. So you can see here when we pull the hair tight, it just angles down there. And I've got just this little guy right there to blend in. And again, in the sides, everything is just coming straight down. We're not elevating or anything like that. And we're gonna wait to do any layering until after it is dried. usually on that very top layer, you're not gonna have typically anything to cut, especially if they had layers in the past already, or, I mean, if their hair was really long and they're cutting it all off, you would probably have more to cut, but her hair wasn't crazy long when we started. So all we're gonna do is do the same on this other side to cut our haircut completely. And then I'm gonna get her dried and I'll show you guys how we're gonna start creating kind of those lived in layers. I have just a tiny bit right in this front corner. So what I will do before we dry it is I'll take like a look to see if my sides are lining up accurately. I stand in front of the client. I always end up blocking you guys for this, but I stand in front of the client and I just check the pieces and I feel like it's looking good. So now we are going to blow dry the hair. I'm just gonna do a really smooth blow dry, nothing crazy. This mannequin has sort of like medium hair. It has like a little bit of a wave. So I'm gonna use a little bit of a mousse because we want some fullness. This is Paul Mitchell's Extra Body Sculpting Foam. And we're gonna work that into the hair. And then just a tiny bit of Kerastase oil. And so when I come back, we will get into dry cutting, and I'm just gonna do a really smooth blow dry. I do recommend always styling the hair very straight with a bob so you can see exactly how it's laying. That's gonna allow you to do your dry cutting the most accurate way. I don't wanna create like all this bend and bounce. I just wanna get it nice and smooth. So I'm using a larger round brush. I believe this is about 2.5 inches. If the hair, you could do a bigger brush too. It's all personal preference, but we're just gonna do a nice smooth blow dry, and then I'll show you guys how to do our dry cutting. All right, so I've got her nice and straight, and this is making me want to bob. I feel like every time I cut bobs, I say that, but we have a very nice, clean perimeter, very, very soft angle towards the front. Like, it's not dramatic, it's not crazy, it just flows. So hypothetically, we could be done with the cut right now because it actually looks really good, but I wanna just cut into it a little more. The goal of this cut is to keep it looking as thick and full as possible while still creating a little bit of shape and movement. So even though this does look good, we can kind of cut into this bottom part a little bit to just lightly soften it up and make it like just a touch more lived in. Now, if somebody like did not want any layers, you would just stop at this point and move on. But this is for somebody who still wants their hair looking full, but a little bit of shape. Because right in here, like, it looks really nice, but it could just be lightly softened. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna section somewhat similar, where we're separating the back from the front, but I'm actually gonna do it more so in horseshoe partings, just because I don't wanna create like this hard line here. So we're just gonna come from the back and wrap around to the front. You can take bigger sections if you want. I usually do about literally like 3, so one up top, one here, and then the bottom is sort of left out. I might clip up a couple pieces. You don't have to be as neurotic with your sectioning for this part because everything, the bulk is cut as far as your perimeter. You're just going in and kind of perfecting. I am gonna just pull this up because that kind of got left out. And so the goal here is to just lightly soften in this middle kind of bottom section, because this is where the weight of this cut is, which is really good, but sometimes it'll make drying a little more difficult because so much of the weight is gathered here. So you might feel like you breeze through kind of the top part and then you get like this feeling of the hair stuck or it's just not drying, and it's because it just needs a little bit of cutting into. We're gonna have the client look down again for this part, and I like to just go scissor over comb. We're just pulling the hair straight out, and I'm just cutting into it, and I'm point cutting it. I'm not, we're not going straight across. We are cutting in because we're trying to just create soft, kind of lived in texture. We are not creating a set layer. Because if you come in here and you just go straight across, you're going kind of right back to that old school stack kind of look. And this is very lived in. So we can go scissor over comb, and we're just coming in, and as I pull out, I'm closing my shear slightly. I'm not closing it all the way, just very minimally. And sometimes I'll come in and just sliver very, very gentle on the hair to remove a little bit of weight, but it's not that traditional layer. I'm gonna move up. This is actually one of my favorite cuts to do, I think. It's just, you kind of get to be creative with it within reason, you know? And as a girl with like really straight, fine, I have a lot of hair in the back of my head, but not in the front. I love any cut that looks like nice, thick and full. So we are gonna continue a little bit of doing scissor over comb and just cutting into that very, very softly. You are gonna pull the hair straight back. We're not gonna round the corner with this. I don't wanna remove too much weight. I feel like if I round the corner, kind of just, it doesn't blend well. So you wanna pull it straight back. It kind of helps keep that very minimal angle we have going towards the front. So just remember that you're not gonna round with it, you're gonna pull it back towards you. And then as I move up, I am gonna check my perimeter and make sure. These mannequins always lean to one side and it drives me crazy. But if you see any little hairs poking out, just go and nip them. She's got a couple right in this area. Sometimes the hair right along the nape likes to pop out. So after I do scissor over comb, I will just lightly pull this hair out, and you can see that it angles up. And that's because of that very, very minimal elevation. And sometimes I'll just nip into those areas. Again, we're just point cutting those ends to soften it and create that lived in look. And once I get kind of past that occipital bone right below in that crown region, I will just come straight up like a regular layer and point cut. Now, if you have fine hair and a lower density, you definitely want to have your hairstylist point cut the ends. You do not want them to necessarily do it with the traditional thinning shears. If you have a lot of hair, the thinning shears are going to be better for you. You would do the same thing where you're going scissor over comb and cut into that, but the thinning shears are going to remove a little bit more bulk from the hair. And they can be done on finer hair types. It just depends on your density really, and also how the stylist chooses to use the thinning shears. Sometimes people can be a little heavy-handed with them, and if you've ever had a bad experience with thinning shears, chances are you never want them used on your hair. But the point cutting just works nice, and again, I'll come in and just sliver. So all I'm doing with this is it's just the very outer perimeter, outer layer of the hair. We're just surface cutting it, so it creates shape, but it keeps that thickness. And you're just gliding. I'm barely removing really any hair. It just softens it up a little bit. And then sometimes, like on this side, I feel like it's a little just too heavy here. So I'm just gonna come in and point cut softly right in this area. Usually one side of the head is a little bit thicker than the other. That's very common. So I have my sides down here, and I like to visually just look at this. This is a mannequin, so while the density is low, sometimes it has more thickness. Rarely ever with a client or on yourself are you going to need these sides like softened, just because typically we have less hair through the side perimeter. But if for some reason you do, you know, you would kind of just sliver and do the same thing. Let out our top section. Might have to smooth it back out from my clips. So with the top section, I am gonna come in and we're just gonna go in sections, kind of classic to how you would with a traditional layer. And we're just gonna sort of connect this angle. It's very, very minimal hair that's coming off. It's still mostly just that point cutting, but you just connect the two and blend. And I like to just kind of always cut up at an angle still. You're going from short to long. We're never cutting just a straight line across. I always add a T to the end of across, and a lot of you let me know in the comments. And we're gonna do the same on this other side as far as taking this back and matching it up, just cutting up into that. Again, we're not cutting straight across. Everything is coming back in this top section. So you can see here, it's very subtle, but you can see the movement in the hair. So if you're somebody who likes to use like a texturizing spray, you're gonna be able to get a little bit more body and fullness and have that movement while still having the hair look nice and full. So the last thing, and this is totally optional, I wanna show you guys just as an option. If you like the hair and you don't want any sort of face frame or bang, you would stop here. But we are gonna create just a tiny bit, very soft and minimal, kind of on theme with how we're doing the layers. It's a very lived in look. It's not meant to be like, oh, you have a side bang or a face frame. We're just gonna come in and we're taking just the very front corner here. It's just a little bit of like a triangle here. I'm gonna take the front corner of this triangle and take this corner here. I'm gonna leave that out. I'm gonna do it more freehand. I just wanna skim this. So we're gonna be right at the lip and we're just gonna lightly graze that. Again, I'm trying to keep, you know, the look of like that nice, smooth, full hair. We just want soft shape. So this doesn't cut into the sides. It doesn't jeopardize the weight in the front. It just adds like a very, very minimal layer in face frame. We're gonna do this on the other side again. I'm not even gonna necessarily use the same exact guide because I can just see, and because it's so soft. Oh, so good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a little bit of hairspray and then I'll show you guys a full spin in slow motion so you can see, but that is how we create our nice full body lived in bob with minimal layering. All right, guys, here is our final and finished look of this bob haircut. I absolutely love it. Like I said, every time I cut a bob, I want one for myself. But we just have that nice clean perimeter with just a very slight angle going towards that front. And again, we just have really soft lived in layers. These are not traditional layers. They are not meant to look super layered or short. They're meant to just give you some nice shape and movement in the cut while keeping your hair looking as thick and full as possible. Again, remember, if you have fine hair, request that your stylist create those soft layers with the regular shears to point cut into them. If you have thicker, coarse hair, you can have that done with the thinning shears. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. Drop a heart emoji in the comments if you did. And in the meantime, I will leave you with this next video you can check out right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.